It started with a knock, not a gentle one, but a loud, hurried pounding that shattered the early morning silence. It was February 2013 in Guangdong, and 17-year-old Xiaohao woke to the echo of fists against his bedroom door. His heart raced. Just last night, he'd gone to bed after another brutal argument with his parents about his future, his grades, his obsession with music. They wanted him to study engineering. He wanted to play guitar. They had fought so often that the walls of that small apartment had grown used to the shouting. But this knock was different, too forceful, too urgent, and when he opened the door, the nightmare began. Two men stood there, strangers in plain clothes claiming to be police officers. Their faces were stern, their tone official. They asked if he knew someone who had been arrested the night before. Xiaohao shook his head, confused. He had never heard the name. Then came the words that would change everything. "You're suspected of being an accomplice. You need to come with us." Fear replaced confusion. Before he could even ask for proof, they motioned him out the door. Downstairs, the car waiting for them wasn't a police vehicle. No flashing lights, no badges, just a dark sedan idling by the curb. "We're undercover," they said calmly. "We don't want to alert the criminals." That explanation sounded reasonable enough, but Xiaohao's instincts whispered otherwise. As the city faded into the distance and the car refused to slow down near the supposed police station, panic began to settle in his chest. After 30 long minutes, they pulled into a deserted courtyard on the edge of the city, a place that looked more like a prison than a police facility. The truth hit him like cold water. These men weren't police, they were kidnappers, but not the kind seeking ransom. This was something far more disturbing. The compound was one of many secret rehabilitation centers across China, facilities where parents sent their troubled children to be corrected, reprogrammed, or broken into obedience. Xiaohao had been betrayed by the two people he trusted most. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. The walls were high and crowned with barbed wire. Guards patrolled the yard with military precision. The place called itself a vocational academy, but it was nothing more than a boot camp for broken souls. Children torn from their families and labeled as addicts, failures, or rebels. Every morning began at 7 a.m. with grueling exercises, chants about discipline and punishments for the smallest mistakes. Xiaohao realized quickly that this wasn't rehabilitation. It was control. The story of how such places came to exist was rooted in fear. Fear of a new digital world that parents didn't understand. In the early 2000s, China's rapid technological boom gave rise to the first generation of teenagers raised on the internet. In dimly lit internet cafes, packed shoulder to shoulder, young people found escape from rigid academic expectations. To their parents, these smoky basements filled with glowing screens looked like gateways to ruin. Media headlines fed the panic. Stories of teens collapsing after marathon gaming sessions. Experts warning that the internet is destroying our youth. In 2005, one so-called specialist even claimed that 90% of juvenile crime was caused by the internet. Parents were terrified. And out of that fear, an industry was born. An industry that promised to cure their children. By 2006, institutions began appearing nationwide. They called themselves Internet Addiction Treatment Centers, offering salvation for desperate families. The concept was simple. The internet was a disease, and they claimed to have the cure. Parents paid enormous fees to have their kids taken away, treated, and returned as obedient sons and daughters. Some of these centers were run by self-proclaimed doctors, others by ex-soldiers or psychologists who believed they were saving the nation's youth. Among them was a man who became infamous, Yang Yongxin. Yang was a psychiatrist from Shandong who presented himself as a savior. He told the public that online gaming was turning bright, promising children into empty shells. He promised to fix them, and parents believed him. His method was called brain awakening therapy. It sounded scientific, but behind the closed doors of his facility, it was pure torment. When a child entered Yang's center, the first thing that happened was isolation. Phones confiscated, contact with family cut off. The parents signed papers surrendering temporary custody, legally binding, giving Yang total control. What followed were months of forced medication, humiliation, and something far worse: electroshock therapy. Yang believed that by sending electric currents through a patient's brain, he could erase their addiction, their defiance, even their personality. But this wasn't standard medical practice. Patients were awake, screaming, as the current surged through their temples. To keep them from biting through their tongues, assistants shoved rubber mouthguards between their teeth. The pain was indescribable. Some passed out. Others suffered burns. Yang didn't call it torture. He called it treatment. For years, he operated openly. Parents continued sending their children, convinced that pain was the price of healing. Those who resisted were threatened with Ward 13, a locked room where the worst punishments occurred. Survivors rarely spoke of it, but whispers spread online. The smell of burning, the screams that never stopped. And yet, he was praised. Newspapers called him the nation's top internet addiction doctor. By 2009, Yang claimed to have cured nearly 3,000 teenagers. Each family paid thousands of yuan per month, in a country where the average salary was half that. It was a booming business, but not everyone stayed silent. One survivor, a boy named Xiaohao, escaped and revealed the truth. He had endured more than 30 sessions of electroshock after trying to run away. When his parents learned what had happened, they withdrew him immediately and were fined heavily for violating the treatment contract. Xiaohang's story spread across the internet like wildfire. More victims stepped forward. The Chinese public, once sympathetic to Yang, turned in horror. Television reports exposed the abuse. Protests erupted online. Treatment centers across the country came under scrutiny, accused of violence, starvation, even deaths. And still, new ones kept opening. Parents, desperate, ashamed, and afraid of losing control of their children, kept signing the papers. Back in that bleak courtyard, Xiaohao tried to survive. He followed orders, kept quiet, and learned how to navigate the hierarchy of the other inmates. Older students bullied the newcomers, desperate to win the guards' approval. Some were forced to crawl on gravel as punishment. Others were beaten by their peers while instructors looked on, calling it discipline. Even the smallest privileges, an extra piece of bread, a few minutes of rest, had to be earned through obedience. Xiaohao's days blurred together, the drills, the shouting, the sleepless nights. 4 months passed before his parents finally retrieved him. He returned home thinner, quieter, and changed. But he was lucky. Others never made it back. Reports surfaced of teenagers dying in these centers. One 19-year-old girl beaten to death during training. A 16-year-old boy who lasted only 2 days before succumbing to internal injuries. Families were told it was an accident. No one was held accountable. Yang Yongxin's facility was officially shut down in 2016, but by then the damage was irreversible. It was estimated he had treated more than 6,000 patients, and when the spotlight faded, he rebranded, opening new centers under different names, promising softer methods but offering the same old pain. Even today, versions of these institutions still exist, hidden behind new titles: youth development academies, rehabilitation camps, parental reform centers. The names change, but the idea remains: obedience through suffering. Years later, Xiaohao would say that what broke him wasn't the pain or the training. It was the realization that his parents had handed him over willingly. They believed they were saving him, but in their desperation to fix their son, they lost him instead. The story of Xiaohao, and thousands like him, isn't just about internet addiction. It's about fear, control, and the terrible things people do when they mistake silence for healing. And though the world has moved on, the echoes of those hidden courtyards still linger. Somewhere, behind another locked gate, another teenager may be hearing that same knock, the sound of their freedom disappearing.